All right, welcome, Blockheads. It is Wednesday, May 22nd, 2024. You are listening to episode 81 of Business on the Block. This week, unfasten your safety belt. OpenAI kills the team keeping their AI safe. Scarlett Johansson loses her voice. And Slack faces an AI scandal around user data. We'll tell you all about it. This is going to be the latest in business, AI, and blockchain. We will explain to you what is happening in the world of business, why it matters, and how you can take advantage of it. I am joined, as always, by my lovely co-host, Michelle Peterson-Clark.
Good morning, afternoon, everyone.
And Mike Neubauer.
Good morning.
Michelle will bring the marketing chops. Mike is operations. My expertise is sales and strategy. So two of my colleagues here are both the walking wounded. Everyone's under the weather but me, apparently. To kick us off,
thanks.
To kick us off with a little bit of lightheartedness, though, for those who don't know, today is May 22nd. This is Bitcoin Pizza Day. Michelle, tell us a bit about Bitcoin Pizza Day. What is it? Why does it matter?
It matters only because of the poor bugger who bought two pizzas worth $21. Oh, Mike's got pizza Mike, if you go into our Discord chat, there's actually the post that the guy put in when he bought the pizza, which is hilarious. And he traded 10,000 Bitcoin for it. But the really interesting thing about it is that what he wanted to be able to buy a pizza without having to order it himself, make it himself, and ask someone to come and bring him the pizza or whatever in exchange for 10,000 Bitcoin, worth how much in today's value?
10,000
$650 million US dollars.
So that was back in 2010. The Florida man Laszlo Hanyecz paid 10,000 Bitcoins for two pizzas from Papa John's. And so that is, as I said to Michelle prior to the show, this poor bastard is immortalized forever and is reminded every year that he didn't get the $650 million he should have.
As I said to you in our pre-game chat, hopefully he had more than 10,000 Bitcoin at the time.
Hopefully. All right, I'm taking us into story number one. OpenAI.
Mike can't talk because he's got his mouth full of pizza.
That's all right. This week, OpenAI has disbanded the team that is devoted to their AI risk safekeeping. OpenAI has disbanded the team that will be managing the dangers of developing artificial general intelligence. The quote-unquote super alignment group was responsible for ensuring their AI doesn't go rogue and harm humanity. The team's leader, Ilya Sutskever, is the company's co-founder. He has resigned from the firm. For those who followed the boardroom battle back in November, he was OpenAI's chief scientist, and he had voted to remove Altman as chief executive. Of course, Altman was put back in place by Microsoft. Separate from that, Ethereum co-founder Vitalik Buterin has called this move risky. So, thoughts around this, Mike? We'll start with you. What do you think about OpenAI literally removing the safeguards around proper development of AI that won't harm humanity?
Well, I'd be curious if AI told them to do that. Why? Just what's the reason other than those guys had some pushback that is counter to what they're trying to do at this point?
Money,
whatever, man. Like, as we're going to talk about later on in this episode, like AI is being forced and integrated into every aspect of our existence. Money is not going to be a problem. Like, they're going to get their money in every facet of our culture, our society, our technology. I'm kind of disappointed I didn't get to comment on Bitcoin pizza, but I'll come back to that.
You think a moment.
No. I'll have my 2 cents on that for sure. But where does this all end up? Who knows, man? I mean, look, clearly there's still a lot of puppeteers pulling puppet strings that we don't necessarily know the details of. Whether that comes with information, data collection, what are some of the implications that we talked about, with ChatGPT 4.0 or whatever the hell it's called now. Like, everybody has all these concerns with things like TikTok because of the image recognition data that it's sourcing in all of the user engagement. Like, this is that on steroids. So if somebody's going to sit there and say, whoa, maybe we should pump the brakes because this is a little risky. Sorry, there's the door. That's the attitude. And we're just going to pretend this doesn't exist. Like, this is a big problem that definitely needs to be front and center. And, I guess until they have a crop of shareholders that they have to be held accountable for to answer those questions, they're just going to continue to do whatever they want.
I'm going to quote a Bruce Springsteen lyric here. Poor man want to be rich, rich man want to be king, and a king ain't satisfied till he rules everything. This is for those who care. This is what you get when a guy has a lot of money and they feel, this is Microsoft backed. They don't feel there's any rules. We'll touch on Scarlett Johansson in a minute, but like they are doing whatever they think they want to do with neither here nor there. Michelle, what do you think about this? Is this good, bad? Do you think that this is going to hurt us in the long run?
Well, in answer to your latter question, I don't think that I don't think we know what this is going to do in the long run. But let's go back to, shall we, August 2023, when Elon fired, let's see, I'll give you the list. Content moderators, VP of diversity, head of legal, the entire human rights team, communication departments, the ethical AI team. He did it. He got away with it, even though, all of those of us who say that Twitter X is more the poorer for it, but people are still using it. OpenAI have done this because, frankly, you can do it and get away with it. And why wouldn't they? Because then it means that Sam can go unchecked in doing the things that it is that he wants to do. And who knows what ultimately that is. And, the next couple of stories are going to sort of feed into some of the things that they think they can do and get away with, and they'll keep doing.
So for my commentary, I wanted to just draw attention to how finance works. In the Wall Street world of trading, there are broker-dealers in America. The broker-dealers were theoretically registered with the Securities Exchange Commission, and that's the boss. However, they formed a self-regulatory organization to keep the government off their back. FINRA, the Financial Industry Regulatory Authority, is the cops, if you will, that is self-policing for the broker-dealers in America. The reason I bring that up, there is no such organization in the AI world, in any country, but I'm talking about the US right now, Silicon Valley. Everyone says the government should regulate, the government should. The government is so far behind always in everything that they can't, not effective. We already see what's happening here. So if Silicon Valley were going to regulate themselves, if you will, that was our chance. It would have been OpenAI. It would have been things like when Gemini, the bigs get together and make the rules. And yes, it favors them, but at least there's a semblance of authority here. You have, like, come hell or high water, these guys are going to go for the money, and willy-nilly, doesn't matter who gets hurt, what they build. I personally believe, this is my opinion, in my humble opinion, they already are sitting on artificial general intelligence. OpenAI can't release that without disaster if there's any type of regulation. So they're asking for a problem either from the government or even worse, in my opinion. I don't like the look of this at all.
The underlying factor on everything we usually discuss always boils back down to blockchain, right? Is blockchain the solution to a lot of these issues that we're talking about? Is this an alternative to these, snail-paced regulations that, are generally bureaucratic or geopolitical? Blockchain gives the users the ability to audit and to monitor activities and call things out when they're maluse or any sort of abuse of the particular power. And one of the things that I find very interesting, and I'm sure if you listen to this show, you listen to several other podcasts, this is starting to become a little bit more mainstream as the solution. You hear guys like Rogan start throwing around terms like blockchain. I'm willing to bet he doesn't know much about it, but he also realizes about the people that he talks to that this is the underlying solution that will become the foundation for a lot of this technology. And it will be that checks and balances system that we need and have to have in place in order to make sure that what's happening is correct, it's done ethically, and they're not going to be able to get away with any sort of data manipulation that's going to create these falsities and create these narratives that a couple people behind the scenes are going to be able to pull those Wizard of Oz levers. So it's going to be interesting to see how all of this continues to evolve. The problem is that this is a bullet train going faster than the speed of light. And if anybody says, wait a minute, we need to stop and push back, they're kicked off the train. And then to get back on the train, it's already gone.
You joke about I wonder if the AI told it to do that, Mike. But yeah, I mean, that's pretty much, if you had no one in charge, this is what it would look like.
Correct.
All right. I'm going to tie Michelle, last comments before I take us to the next. Oh, you're on mute. You're muted. We
Sorry,
like you
because I'm coughing and sneezing around. I mute myself. Apologies. I mean, I think one of the things that's, there's a couple of things. They only created the division that they've now got rid of about a year ago. And they created it at a time when people were going, oh, what's going to happen? Do you have any checks and balances or whatever? So, let's create something that we can say, oh, yes, they're going to do it for us. Now, not so quietly got rid of it a year later. But I think one of the things that is interesting to think about is that people who supported getting rid of Sam back when he was gone for 3 days, was it? Sacked Friday afternoon, reappointed by Monday morning, 2.5 days. One by one, they will disappear from active participation.
They're leaving in droves right now. It's not one by they've lost a lot of senior leadership over at OpenAI. However, who hasn't departed is anyone from the Microsoft tech area.
Yeah.
Which again begs the question: who is pulling the strings?
Well, we know this is a Microsoft product.
I mean, they've put a lot of money into it, haven't they? I mean, let's face it.
The reality is the influence of power on all of this is the Microsoft shareholder. Whether we like that or not, that is how, and that's a publicly traded company.
But the Microsoft shareholder cannot demand answers to this.
No. But the goal of the Microsoft shareholder is endless growth to the sky, which is unusual. That's unreasonable. And right now, ChatGPT provides that avenue. But you'd have to remove all the government.
Evolution of it is providing that it's paving that way and creating that roadmap that there is no end in sight. But again, where does all this lead to? Where does all of this information embedded in every single aspect of our existence at this point? You can't do anything without seeing the term AI nowadays. Yeah. It's not possible. But what machine is this feeding? How is this all being collected and used? Nobody really knows the answers to that.
Here's my real fear. As an American business person, I am a capitalist. I fear that this is when you get to unfettered capitalism, which is what we're running into, you run into problems. It's the same way you have unfettered, socialism leads to communism. I think that this is going to end up biting us in the butt as a global society. And that if no one, and I can see why it happens if it doesn't get, it's like blockchain. If you don't want to stymie it here, it's going to go over to Asia or whatever. I think that this is the reality of money drives interests, and that's bad. At the extreme end of it, it's bad. I'm not a fan of how this is developing. All right. I want to tie this to a second story, though, because it relates. This is going to be story number 2 coming to us. Actually, Wenny.com. Don't even know these guys. Scarlett Johansson is shocked and angered over her ChatGPT voice. So for those who were following the story with OpenAI's actress Scarlett Johansson was approached back in September. Sam Altman asked her if they could use her voice to voice the new ChatGPT 4.0, which was released last week, and she declined. 2 days prior to the release of this new 4.0, Altman asked her to reconsider. She never responded. They came out with a voice, regardless, that was synthetic and eerily similar to hers, quote. The actress was, as she said, shocked, angered, and in disbelief, and has now retained lawyers. So, thoughts on this, Michelle? What do you think is happening here? How does this relate to the previous story, and where do you think this goes?
What's the saying? It's easier to ask for forgiveness than it is for permission.
They've gotten good at that.
Yeah. Really interesting thing. In the wake of the George Carlin lawsuit that we have talked about a couple of times on this show, it isn't her. It's not meant to be her. But, there's things around this that it's probably also one of the reasons why she's annoyed. And it's that it's it would appear that it has very blokey overtones of it being, you know, something that the boys might like and not necessarily what women might like in terms of how it's voiced and the types of things it says and the innuendo that comes with it. So at this current time, whether, you know, you believe in political correctness around that stuff or not, it's probably not a good way to go at this particular point in time. However, she is also one of, one of the, you know, hot acting actresses at this particular time. And if they asked her and she said no, like, why on earth did they go ahead with this? Like, I just don't get it. I don't know. Is this one of the, you know, all publicity is good publicity, therefore, you know, this her film or this dystopian thing that they've created, like, you know, is that them wanting to just get more marketing chops around it, and this is how they've done it? Like,
I feel like the rules don't apply to big companies that more, so they think. Mike, what do you think about this?
Do you guys remember TomToms?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So this was like the Google Maps in your car before you had a phone or smartphone. Well, the big update that they had at one point is that you can have the directions read to you in Homer Simpson's voice, right? And then it can create all these jokes about turning left and turning right and stopping at the stoplight. Like, the voiceovers in these, you know, technological things have been seeded since way back before smartphones existed. But my question about all this is, how soon before the Scarlett Johanssons of the world are no longer needed, right? You can create an AI version a la Sports Illustrated, create this entire fake persona, create this voice, all generated around somebody like Scarlett Johansson, but combining her with 10 or 15 other actresses based around the way that they sound, they talk, their tones, their jokes, and just combine that into one super, you know, AI-driven chat bot that people would download. Obviously, this is an infringement on her brand, on her, you know, career. But I don't think that they're going to have much foot to stand on, because they can easily modify the voice by 1 decibel and it's creating a whole different voice. You know, the anybody who's ever written a patent or knows anything about patent law, you can write patents, you can trademark your business as much as possible, but if you're not willing to defend it and go that extra mile to actually make those who infringe on it held accountable, it's useless. So you just did all that work and you paid all that money to protect yourself for no reason. I'm kind of glad that she's taking the step in going, you know, to seek out legal counsel. Again, I just don't know what kind of ground she's going to have the ability to stand on with this. This is a settlement rather than an actual lawsuit.
So the rock band Hootie and the Blowfish referenced a Bob Dylan lyric in one of their songs, one of their hit songs, and they referenced it and credited him in the song, and got sued by Dylan and had to pay. So yes,
anyway,
aggressive protection of your brand, Mike, is a great point. I have 2 thoughts on this. On the side of the voice itself, for those who have not heard it, it is definitely suggestive. It is flirty. It appeals to the male ego. Michelle, you're dead on with that. In fact, there's a lot of late night skits that are hilarious about it. You can look it up yourself. The point is, it was built by dudes. You can tell it was built by dudes for dudes. And that, politically incorrect or whatever, that's what's going on over there. The second thing is, interestingly, there's a psychology here. On my Apple iPhone, I can have the map directions, Mike, read to me in 3 different accents. You get to choose it. American, which I am. British, which I'm not, but is always considered sophisticated by the Americans. And ironically, Michelle, Australian, which Americans love the Australian accent. And then you could choose male or female. So my map directions are read to me by a female Australian voice.
Well, that says a lot about you.
Right. My point is, don't forget I was a big Elle McPherson fan too. My point is this, though. This is a psychological way to manipulate people, and OpenAI would know this, which takes me to the more important aspect of my comment. What this is indicative of, that they asked her, she basically says no. They ask her again, like they're not taking no for an answer. She doesn't respond. They go ahead anyway. This is very reflective and indicative of people who have power gone to their heads. I've seen this on Wall Street.
Very Elon-esque.
I love Elon, so I'm not going to comment, but I will say this. people who feel the rules don't apply, that's what we're dealing with here. And by the way, they have just turned off their safety features for AI, whatever that means. So I do not like the direction that this is going in. And again, it's all going to be the Microsoft money influence. You've got a very large company with a very big product that just doesn't feel they need to. If they get sued,
what if we're overthinking this? What if it's just a marketing strategy? You know, we're gonna create this Scarlett Johansson voice. We're gonna ask her if she's okay with it, and then we'll pretend we're developing it after she gives the okay. They release it, and now Scarlett Johansson backs the fact that they're doing that. Or option B, she says no, and then she files a lawsuit, which puts them in the news anyway, which is going to do what for people who are looking to change? They're going to seek out what the voice sounds like. So either which way you look at it, it's a marketing play, right? It's designed to get asses in the seats no matter what. It's a win-win for them.
I think it becomes a marketing play, Mike, but I think it's I think they weren't going to take no for an answer.
Well, again, they didn't, right? But again, at the end of the day, they still get the headlines. They still get the publicity. They still get us talking about this for 9 minutes and 14 seconds when I should be eating more pizza. But like the bottom line is like, is Scarlett Johansson right? Yes. But will she win? Probably not.
So
but the problem they've got too, right? You know, whether you agree or disagree with Me Too movement and all of that stuff, a woman said no to them and they went,
yeah, but this is the Silicon Valley guy, right?
Not good.
This is the
I'm willing to bet. I'm willing to bet if they did the same thing with Fabio's voice, and Fabio was like, no,
let's go with the Rock.
There's a lot of women that would download that too, but I think that if Fabio was giving his little one-liners and you know they had some sort of an AI hair blowing in the breeze, it would be the same scenario, even if he said no.
But if they asked Fabio and he said no, I bet you they would have gone, oh, well, we'll find someone else. Because when a man says no, it's okay. When a woman says no, it's a maybe for a lot of men, unfortunately.
Mike, I'm gonna change your Fabio example because I think it's a good point. And I'm gonna support you. Fabio's not the right comp. I'm gonna go with Bruce Springsteen. A very recognizable voice who's very hot in the industry and is pretty much the name. This is Scarlett Johansson right now in the acting industry. As an actress, she's at the top of the pyramid. So if Bruce Springsteen were asked, to Michelle's point, by Silicon Valley, can we use your voice as the new voice of GPT 4.0? And he said no, what would they do?
They'd still use it because they already did it.
I don't think they would.
I think there is definitely a sexist angle of this. And I don't want to get into the whole Me Too thing, but I feel like that is a valid point, Michelle.
Who would benefit more from OpenAI? Is it men or women? Can we answer that?
Well, right now, the way they've built it, it's geared for men.
How do you say that? Like
it flirts with you.
No. I'm not talking about the voice. I'm talking about the technology in general.
Oh yeah, tech is tech. I agree with you. The gender.
I mean, like
tech is very
technology have nothing to do with each other,
isn't it?
Well,
tech is still very masculine
until OpenAI tells you how good you look in your lipstick, container. I would say that look, that's coming. That 100% that's coming. A mirror that's going to talk to you in AI because it has the image recognition of what you. I'm patenting that, by the way. That's going to be a multi-million-dollar
Mike, do I look fat in these pants?
Well, yeah. I'm not your AI bot, so I would tell you yes. But yeah, look, I mean, just a side note of all this, doesn't this just fuel isolationism? Yes. The ability to talk to yourself and have something that you train tell you what you want to hear.
Have you heard the term social media?
This is not social.
Echo chambers. It's exactly what
I don't know. It depends which one of your personalities you want to talk to today.
It's me talking into this microphone and the only person able to hear is my headphones.
That's what the sound of everyone's own voice is the best thing for them, like in their mind.
That voice can now be in the form of Scarlett Johansson.
All right. I'm taking us into story.
Well, no, it can't because she said no.
I'm taking us into story. Actually, you know what part of the show we're going to move into now? All right, grab your conspiracy hats because it's a Slack story here. Slack is under fire for using user data to train AI models. Communication tool Slack has stirred controversy for leveraging user content to train its machine learning models without consent. The fine print for their signups allows usage of this, but it doesn't provide a clear way to opt out of it. The timeline of when they started doing this new policy was quietly introduced by the Salesforce.com owned company. It's unclear when they started doing it. Anyway, here's the real key of it all. Slack's marketing asserts, quote, "Work without worry. Your data is your data. We don't use it to train Slack AI," end quote. So clearly Slack is lying in their marketing because they've had a bunch of whistleblowers come forth and say, hey, they're using the data to train AI models. Mike, we'll start with you on this. First of all, what are your thoughts around, is this another Sports Illustrated going to blow up thing, or is this no biggie? Everyone's using their data.
I mean, it's going to be a combination of both. And again, if you take a poll of 10 people on the street and ask them if you want Facebook to use their data, 9.5 out of 10 would say no. But then they would just leave the interview and go post on Facebook without any understanding or regard of what that question really involves. So I think that, we're not only going to see this with Slack, we're going to see this with almost every major company. They are going to implement AI tools behind the scenes that are going to start analyzing, capturing, measuring different traffic trends, data history, any sort of user engagement, and they're going to compartmentalize them into various segments within their own organization. But then that same information is fed up to that bigger machine, which can then be sold to other companies. That's the future of where all this is heading. Is Slack going to be held responsible for where that data ends up when Facebook gets their hands on it? No, because they don't care. They're using a third-party software. But again, this is the danger, and especially linking back to story number 1 of who's responsible for, monitoring or analyzing this risk. Like, now they're out the window. Well, this is on a very slippery slope, again, with that bullet train going 100 miles an hour down that hill.
Back in Wall Street, we always referred to the compliance department, which was to keep you safe, as the sales prevention department. And in these technology firms, Slack is interested in making money, not in protecting their users' data. Michelle, what do you think about this? Do you think that this is going to become is this a big issue? Is it the conspiracy that we think it is? Or is this just people understand the way they did with social media? Hey, they're using my data. I kind of know it.
The problem you have with this is that there are a lot of companies who use Slack for their internal communications. They would have confidential documents, confidential information in it. Like, if you have to go through every single particular setting, et cetera, to try and work out which bits of what you post in which Slack channels on your company Slack, then that's a problem. And I think ultimately, unless there are safeguards around it, people will stop using Slack and their business will suffer. And are they in the business of training AI models, or are they in the business of providing companies with, an online platform for communication within the group of people that work there?
That's a really
Mike's
good point.
shaking his head.
No, this is a business risk for this company. In my other alter ego here, where I work, one of my clients is the premier end-to-end encryption communication platform for Wall Street. So when people talk to each other, they want to make sure that no one's seeing that data, and that's not
absolutely.
If they can't protect that, to your point, Michelle, and everyone's on Slack already, they might just, there's an opportunity here for another company to pop in and be like, listen, but then again, same problem. How do you guarantee it?
Do we remember back when OpenAI first started, ChatGPT started, and was it Hewlett Packard put contracts or something up on there, and third parties who were also bidding for contracts found out they didn't win the contract?
Yes,
because someone had put the winning bid up to check it for whatever reason. I can't remember the exact details, but in actual fact, it got leaked because it started to turn up in other Chat GPT searches when it hadn't even been announced by the company yet.
That's a great point. For those who didn't follow that story, there was proprietary information that unrelated parties using ChatGPT were able to pull up about people elsewhere in companies in ChatGPT's databases.
But again, doesn't that just prove exactly what I described earlier about all this data funneling to a main machine and then being exported out based around whatever it learns? Right.
So
And again, you're like, you can post great pictures of your kids on Facebook, but the fact that you're doing that creates some segmentation that can then be repurposed for other users. It's training an algorithm. That's what this AI is. It's a gigantic self-learning, whatever you want to call it. It's an algorithm. And this algorithm is designed to provide a specified targeted output based around any specific input. And this is just getting bigger and faster. And if there's no safety rails in place, it's going to get out of control.
So what came to my mind when I read this story, by the way, if those who haven't seen the new Gemini update, it basically gives you the ability to enable it to read your Google Drive. So it's not automated, but yeah, Google will now allow you to have their AI comb your Google Drive, yours, personal, your proprietary, and you can build things.
How do I turn that off?
Well, that's my point. Like, there comes a point in my mind where you can't turn that on. You won't even know it's happening.
It's part of the terms and conditions that you agree to without reading it,
which is what Slack did. And then they made it to opt out. If you read this article, basically you had to write a letter. Yeah. It was a whole rigmarole
that's a very odd way of doing that.
Yeah. So legally they're not in trouble because it's in the, however.
So let's talk about the liability component of this. They are not liable for the fact that they're using this third-party application. If there's any breach of that data, like it appears somewhere else in somebody else's ChatGPT search, ChatGPT and OpenAI is responsible for where that data is managed and repurposed.
That doesn't seem to be happening, though.
Well, Slack is not being held liable legally at this point. And when they do, when the rubber meets the road and people start saying timeout, what the hell is happening? All they got to do is point the finger to OpenAI. Sorry, it was them.
So, Michelle,
Mike, scan down to the last two paragraphs. I think these two are some of the two really pertinent bits. So, additionally, Slack's marketing for its premium AI generative tools say, work without worry. Your data's your data. We don't use it to train Slack AI. Okay, so that's what they're saying in the marketing stuff. But it actually only, and the next paragraph says to you, it only pertains to the premium AI tools and not the broader everything else that they're dancing around doing stuff, And so, I mean, it's kind of like it's deception at a pace in which, if we weren't reporting about this every week, we would not know as much as we did. So for all those people who are not watching our show or not reading the general news about this stuff, keeping up with it, they're in big trouble.
Yeah, no joke. That when you say things like, quote, we don't use it to train Slack AI, people assume it means that they don't use it to train Slack AI. That's not true. All right. So anyway, I'm going to take this to pair this to another story here. This is actually a related story. Reddit is soaring after announcing that OpenAI deal they've cut to allow users of its use of data for training the Reddit AI models. So OpenAI has signed a deal to allow ChatGPT to train itself on Reddit's content. In exchange, Reddit gets AI features powered by ChatGPT. But all of this is out in the open, right? So OpenAI basically becomes a Reddit advertiser. Reddit gets OpenAI's capabilities. This is the right way to do it, if you will. And now we don't have to like that. But when you know that when you use Reddit, your data may end up in an OpenAI, chat somewhere, that's your decision. When you believe it's safe and they say it's safe and it's not, I think that OpenAI is being forced to do it the right way, and they don't want to spend the money, but they're going to have to. So what they're doing initially is trading of services. Fair enough. They're negotiating, if you will. But I really feel like the Slack thing, that is just deceptive. They're not going to get in trouble for it because the fine print allows them. But there's a right way and a wrong way to do it. The question is, does Slack doing it the wrong way cost them their business?
The user has no difference one way or another, because either way, they're being forced into either accepting this or leave the platform. And it's so easy for us to say, well, just stop using it. But Slack, for example, is an internal operational system for a lot of companies, right? It's their internal Discord, so to speak, as their internal communication, their Microsoft Teams or whatever it is. It's a service that a company would pay for to provide some sort of, I guess, a corporate wide benefit. And now the information in that corporate, internal operations is now being sourced to train AI models to make their service better. I mean, there's proprietary stuff in there that they can't just build on their own. Yeah. And if they could, that's going to cost them a lot of time, a lot of money. It's going to create a whole training system. There's an onboarding process that comes at a cost as well. I mean, they're literally taking a round peg and shoving it into this square hole and just saying, we're going to make this fit whether you like it or not.
Which I believe. Go ahead, Michelle.
But wouldn't you, if you were a Notion or a Monday.com or someone else, wouldn't you start thinking to yourself, you know what, we're not going to be the sellout. We're not going to do AI training externally to a third party or whatever, and start advertising your product as being like this, so that everyone who is worried about Slack moves to something else. I don't know what it is. It might not be something that's invented currently.
It could be Discord.
The problem with that though is that AI is still the shiny object. It's still the shiny Ferrari.
At the moment, yeah.
Right. So the implications, and again, go out and ask 10 of your friends who aren't involved in this on a day-to-day like we are, right? Ask them about anything AI related. Oh yeah, that's pretty cool. I tried it out once. I saw some things on, online, and I saw some, conversations and headlines and stuff. They don't understand the risks that are involved at the deeper levels like we're discussing right now. So I'm willing to bet that a corporation who has this as their internal operational infrastructure is not going to understand those risks until it's way too late anyway. So the problem with that model, Michelle, is that if a Monday.com says we're going to stay away from the AI model because it's not secure and this and that, and they give you a whole list of reasons, then the people who are looking for those services and they don't check off that shiny object box, that puts them in the area of BlackBerry, of MySpace, of all these technologies that did not evolve with the advancing technologies as they started to surface.
Mike, I'm going to actually.
But they could provide you with AI and say that it's a closed system for you, though.
And Reddit could do the same thing. They could say it's a closed system, but we're saying we already defined earlier that there is no closed system with this.
So, Mike,
all of this is just feeding a major machine.
Both of you are discussing a business model. The business model would be this: we do enable AI for whatever cool thing we give you, or we are protecting you from AI abuse of your systemized data. Which, at the enterprise level for companies, when you're getting into the IBMs and the Oracles, that's an interesting proposition.
That's worth a lot of money for them.
There is,
but those guys are not using Monday.com. They have their own systems.
No.
But they would if it was the only option.
No, they would build their own. These are major tech companies. They have their own infrastructure in place.
My point is this: there is a market. Michelle's right, for people who say, "All right, my data was effectively stolen and abused. I don't want to have that happen again."
And I get that, and I agree
run a
with
growing
that.
company, and I'm making a lot of money right now, and I got to take action and I have the money to spend. I got to make sure that I don't lose my proprietary edge.
The problem is that you have to fall down and scrape your knee before you realize you're not supposed to run fast.
I'm wondering if Slack has just scraped their knee, and people are going to have to say to themselves, "We'll see how that plays out."
Nobody's been burned yet. The company has been burned and exposed, but nobody's really been burned to the point where they can say this is Slack's fault. This is the reason, whatever happened to me is because I was on Slack.
I think there'll be fallout repercussions from the Slack thing. I really do. Michelle, I'm going to side with you on this one. It's going to be early yet, Mike. This story just broke. Slack is not going to get in trouble. You're right. But there will be fallout from companies that are like, wait a minute.
But that doesn't mean they won't lose business because of it. Like how many meetings in companies now are, how safe is our Slack channels? What have we got on there we don't want in a broader LLM? Do we need to move that to something more secure? If we do, what are the implications of our Slack channel program, whatever?
They're not examining this right now.
Yeah.
Sorry?
They're not examining this right now because they haven't been burned yet.
They're not at the moment, but
to Michelle's point, though,
all it will take is for some bigger company for something to happen, and everyone will start doing that. And then Slack's name is mud. Their business that they've built for all these years suddenly becomes, persona non gratis, and nobody wants to admit that they're running a Slack thing for their internal
If
business.
we've learned
They'll go to
anything from
Basecamp
Facebook, if we learned anything from Facebook, people will still use it.
But if you figured it out with Facebook didn't flat out lie. They didn't say.
Yes, they did. 100% they did.
They never stated overtly we're not using your data.
There was a whole marketing push for privacy when it came to Facebook.
But they never.
Then everything changed within the algorithm. So again, people were burned, and they still have to get their crack fix on Facebook or Instagram every day.
I think that's something to keep an eye on for the Slack. And for those watching the channel or the show, anyone that uses Slack, I can assure you, folks, Mike, that understand the issue are having a second hard look at what's actually been discussed in Slack right now. All right, I'm going to take
the problem you get though, just one last thing. The problem you get is that if you start saying to yourself, okay, we'll use Slack for general chat and whatever, but we're going to keep X, Y, and Z off of that into something else, right? Then what happens is you start having a fragmented internal communication. Eventually, you're either going to go, stuff it, we'll just keep everything on Slack and take our chances, or you're going to say, we're moving off of that and we're either creating our own, or we're going to something else, or whatever. And ultimately, what that means is it's bad for business for Slack.
We're going to find out.
I think.
I'm going to take us out of conspiracy corner. We can take our aluminum foil, tinfoil hats off. This is now getting us closer to the blockchain roots of the show. For those who care, this is an interesting story about VC spending and where the money is going right now. Crypto VCs will invest $12 billion into blockchain projects this year. That's an expectation according to PitchBook. That's for 2024. VC money is focusing now on infrastructure projects, right? So that would be the layer ones. Very different. These are the underlying networks that run crypto, very different from the simple apps that sit atop them, the games, etc. So effectively, in the VC world, investing in blockchain and crypto as a company thing is flat, roughly year over year. In a time of declining, investment, IPO markets dried up. It's holding its own. Let's call it that way. But thoughts around this? The fact that they're starting to focus on infrastructure projects is what caught my eye. Mike, we'll start with you, closer to your world. What do you think about this? Good, bad, or what? What do we think of it?
I mean, 81 episodes in, and I think we've said it ever since episode 1, this technology is not going anywhere. It's here to stay, and it's just a matter of time before the engine starts to, create a fuel system for other business applications. And we're seeing the investment be put into this because people are realizing very quickly that it is a little bit more cost efficient than setting up server farms and having everything kind of funneled into one location. There's transparency benefits to this that you can use as your marketing push. There's a lot of different applications within blockchain. But again, I don't think people need to understand how it works. They just need to understand on how the output is provided. Again, I don't need to know how the little camera in my phone, the 6 of them in my phone, work to provide some image that I take when I push a button on a screen. I just know that the output provides what I'm looking for. And ultimately, blockchain will get to the point where it is just behind the curtain doing its thing. It is the engine under the hood of that Ferrari that nobody pays attention to because they're so captivated by the colors and the shape of the car. And I think this is a good thing. I think this is a good thing overall for the way that technology has evolved. I think that it's going to bring to light, other aspects of the digital world too, things like crypto, things like NFTs. We're going to start seeing these things start bouncing back with this heavy investment starting to be put back into this.
Michelle, what do you think about crypto investing by the VCs remain strong?
Okay, so Microsoft invested $13 billion in OpenAI. So this is 12 billion amongst all the VCs over all of the blockchain projects that they might already be there, they might already be coming up. So a couple of things for me. One is chump change, if you think about it. That's the first thing. Even though it's a lot of money, I'm not saying it's not a lot of money. However, if you divided it by however many projects there might be and however many VCs there are, I think there's quite a few VC firms now going, well, we've missed the major AI investment things, OpenAI and Gemini. All of the other ones are kind of the big players are settling in. So you're either going to be trying to pick one of the minor ones that you think might be really good and be a good investment, or you're going to go, you know what, let's look at blockchain projects that may or may not have an AI component. Let's see if we can pick a winner out of something that might move in the next year or two. So I think that that's kind of a little bit about what's going on. A bit of catch up. People have ignored Web3 blockchain for 18 months, haven't they? Only in the last few months has investment started to come back into it. So I think from that point of view, that's kind of what's going on now. And there's also a bit of a, if we put $1 billion or 500 million into OpenAI now, we're not any kind of a major player in that, given what's happened with Microsoft and all of that. So they're looking for something else. And I think that this is what they're doing. And as Mike said, and as we've talked about, blockchain's the future. I don't think it's a waste of money at all, but I think that they're kind of playing a little bit of catch up.
What caught my eye about this is where the money is going. If you remember, like the adoption curve, for those who are familiar with the bell curve of adoption, you've got the early adopters, the bulk, and then everyone else. This is initially, we had the NFT craze, the apes, the crypto punks, all that crap everyone was like, okay, blockchain enabled all that, but that really wasn't the value of blockchain. We are blown through that. People gave up on it. Crypto winter, that was all done. But now we're emerging into the real use cases of what these things can do. Blockchain infrastructure, building of chains. We're talking about the ability to clear all and settle all trades in the financial world on Wall Street and elsewhere. We're talking about the ability to move all of your marketing online and to create community. The things we've discussed this at length in this show, but what blockchain enables, they're now putting in place the things that would enable blockchain to do that, as opposed to an overlay on top to make a quick buck because blockchain is a cool thing. So even though you're right, Michelle, I agree with you that it's not on the scale of money we want to see. In a downturn, global recession, even though we're not admitting it, the fact that the money has stayed pretty flat, it could always grow. This isn't a huge amount of money. It is chump change, but it is going in the right area. And I think that's telling the blockchain world.
The key that you mentioned is the creation of the chains. And I think that's something that we have yet to really dive into, especially on the business front, right? I mean, anybody can create their own blockchain, right? So we talk about things like Slack. Well, if Slack wanted to create their own blockchain as a safety measure for some of the AI initiatives that they're implementing now, maybe that's the safety rail that each of these companies can implement. And maybe an investment of upwards of the same amount that was put into AI can create some of these easier to form blockchains on an individual company basis. Those nodes could be set up at any different location around the world. It'll work the same as their internal serving farm now, except that it's on blockchain, right? Like you're not limited to one particular location or destination. There's also, it checks off the boxes for so many different things. But again, what if instead of this being the engine that drives it, what if this is the security measure that's put in place? And each of these organizations can have their own guardrails. There could be third-party guardrails set up and outsourced. Like, this is an entire business model in and of itself that's about to be created. And with the money behind it now, we can really start putting a lot of those Web3 developers into action. I read an article today that most of those guys are leaving the US, mostly because of regulations that are starting to come down the pipeline. But this is creating an enormous tech market that is going to be pretty sustainable over the longer period of time as AI continues to develop as well.
Long-time listeners of the show will know we've consistently discussed how blockchain is a solution for the AI conundrum. Michelle, thoughts?
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think that we are starting to see how the corners that people are prepared to sit in, where they're going to be, where they're going to invest in the future of not just their business, but the businesses that they want to help develop and invest in. And I think that we're starting to see that in this last 3 to 4 months and going forward. I think that we're going to see more and more of that, of companies or these, these bigger investment type firms take up positions within fragments and sections of blockchain, Web3, AI, and they will show their hand, I guess, in what it is that they think the future will, how it will unfold.
I want to wrap us soon, but before we do, Mike, I want to get your thoughts. May 22nd being Bitcoin Pizza Day. For those who missed the beginning of the program, back in 2010, a gentleman from Florida paid 10,000 Bitcoin, which would be $650 million US today, for 2 pizzas from Papa John's. Mike, having had some pizza today already, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, it's like being back in college. You have pizza for breakfast. Well, again, you could sit there with the speculation. This is what it would be today, but at the time, it didn't have that value, right? It had the value of whatever somebody was willing to exchange for a product or a service. Pizza. Again, in addition, longtime listeners of this show will understand that I've echoed this point several times as well. This technology is a revenue generated marketing. It's a marketing tool, right? And I think that if anybody is missing an enormous opportunity, especially on a day like today, as all of these things continue to surface back into the headlines and into the news cycles, Papa John's needs to start something where there's, some sort of a reward system or an NFT or any sort of memorialized concept about why this day is so important. Because, as long ago as this happened, we're still talking about it today, even in small circles. But the bigger this gets, this is going to become, the history of this. This is going to be one of the most monumental pieces as those history books are written. And they are missing a gigantic opportunity to get ahead of this marketing trend right now. And frankly, look, it doesn't take much to do it. Starbucks did it. They still have that program operational. It's still thriving. Papa John's can easily do that, which would separate them from every one of their competitors right now. The story wrote itself. And then you can also, as part of some sort of a charity or a donation to the dude that gave you that story, that guy should get free pizza for life, and he should get a cut of every single NFT that's sold for this particular program, just as a reward for that.
Yeah, and I think too, like we said this last year, why haven't they done this? I think we said it the year before, why haven't they done this? Like 3 years down the track, perhaps we need to approach them to set it up for them for next year, because each year we say, what on earth are they doing? Why haven't they done something? Just so that people know the Bitcoin at that time was worth $41 and the pizzas he got delivered were only worth $25. So he paid double what he should have anyway.
Interesting.
Almost.
This is about business model. And to the point of this program, there are so many new business models enabled by blockchain, the ability for companies to build community, the ability for you, the listeners, to create your own community. It is not expensive. It is not as complex as it used to be. A year ago, wallets, all that crap, it's getting solved. So we're not pitching. We're just saying that the reality is companies. I know you are, Mike, but you make a good point. I mean, poor Laszlo, who got shafted at $600 million and change, can make his comeback here with Papa John's. Papa John's can secure themselves a community.
Can you imagine how many bloody pizzas they'd sell on this day every year?
Yeah.
Can you imagine?
Forget about, like, it would create marketing for the space. Yeah, I mean, that's a byproduct to all of this, right? I mean, it's marketing for the overall, like, crypto and blockchain world. It's advancing their marketing strategies using a new technology. It's bringing back Jared from Subway, their version of Jared from Subway, into the spotlight, that wrote that story for, like, there's so many boxes that could be checked here. And it's just, again, I don't know if they don't care. I don't know if I'm sure they've examined this at some point and said, we're not going to touch that. It's not worth it. But you look at models that have been proven already, things like Starbucks. It is a model that works, and it is a model that will continuously evolve, especially with the advancement of AI, especially with the integration of some of these digital wallets and some of the hardware devices. These things are coming. Get ahead of the tsunami now and ride that wave as soon as it lands.
I think I once heard a handsome gentleman say something to the effect of, it's a way to get marketing to pay for itself.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I mean, and we have to shout out to Binance because they actually do a lot for Bitcoin Pizza Day. This week in South Africa, they've got Binance pizza vans driving around. They're doing events in Thailand. They do a heap of different things. They put, little Easter eggs all over their social media to collect pizzas to,
Yeah, all inmates get free
prizes and
pizza.
I was just
today.
going to say pizza delivery to all CZ's inmate friends.
Probably.
All right, I want to shout out to all the fans. Thank you for listening. We special notation for the folks that have been with us from the beginning. You know who you are. I feel like as we start to grow, we appreciate you guys. If you find value in this, please feel free to share. Bolt Nation is the highlight here for us. We also want to say that the concept of this show was really an upscale business conversation around the digital business revolution, as we call it. AI, blockchain, the digitization of business is happening. A lot of people are taken aback by this. It's happening quickly. What does it mean? How can I make money from this? This is supposed to be not a get-rich-quick show, a discussion where people can listen and learn and take part. If you guys want to drop in the chats, we always address conversations. We appreciate the support. We're here every Wednesday, 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time live. We believe that's a differentiator. Again, it will be a focus on AI, blockchain, and the developments in the digital business world. Final comments from my colleagues. Michelle?
Nothing else from me. Hope everyone has a good week.
Mike?
Go get a pizza.
Peace out, everybody.